This is Topline Hotline with your hosts AJ Bruno, Asad Zaman, and me, Sam Jacobs, where we answer questions from the go-to-market community every week. And I said, hey, yeah, yeah, hey, yeah, yeah. I said, hey, watch GTM. I said, hey, yeah, yeah. I said, hey, yeah, yeah. I said, GTM in your face. Topline Hotline, short segment. We're going to answer a question from the Topline community about go-to-market. It's Sam Jacobs, Asad Zaman, AJ Bruno. Hope you're having a wonderful Thursday. And it's we're going to hand the question over to Asad. We're going to answer this question.
Okay. So we've got a really interesting one. It has a lot to do with board meetings.
I said, hey.
Yeah. So, hey, folks, question about messaging in a board meeting on NetSquarter's pipeline. What are the best practices regarding the format to use to update them on the health of the pipeline? What details are essential to include? What do you typically hold back? This is coming from a Series A company. So the answer should be specific to Series A and Series B stage companies. So CRO, going to the board, talking about pipeline. What do they want to hear? And since you guys deal with boards a lot more than I do, Sam, why don't we start with you? What do you think a CRO should be telling their board about pipeline?
I heard some feedback one time when I mentioned what my real answer was from the Topline community. They didn't like my answer. I'm sorry. I think first of all, you should be extremely conservative. I think that my instinct when I'm messaging the board is to try and spin to the positive. And I don't think it behooves you. I think detail information and conservative guidance is the key here for me, from my perspective. AJ is going to have a better answer, just to be clear.
Hey,
so I'm going to go.
Hey.
I said, hey, why don't you tell the truth? But I just think you're gonna want to say something that's like optimistic in the middle distance. And I just think what you really need to be doing is demonstrating that there's a process and a methodology, and that you're continuing to prove your accuracy and your knowledge of what's going on. It is not to present some kind of optimism or positivity, particularly because, especially if it's Series A and you don't have a certain level of predictability. I've just gotten into trouble every time I give any kind of guidance to the board now. I take whatever I wanted to say and I try to discount it by 30%. And
Sam,
yeah, go ahead.
Do you think this is it's really interesting because if you think about the psychology of entrepreneurs, or at least the successful ones, one of the things, people talk about disagreeableness as being a common trait, and it probably is, but it's also optimism, right? Like founders, CEOs are optimistic by nature. They think the world can be better. They think they can build a business. They think they can improve the business. So we are programmed to be optimistic, and that shows up in every slice of our life. So do you think that we have to provide more scenarios, or just so we have our optimistic scenario with the variables that will make it happen or not, but then we're also providing a couple other scenarios, the most likely one, the pessimistic one? Or do you think just go with one and make it the most tilt towards the pessimistic side of things, and so you can come and impress them if you beat it, but just show one? What do you think?
I don't really want to present multiple scenarios. And I guess as I'm talking this through and I'm thinking about where I've run into trouble and where I've gotten feedback from the board, it is less about the numbers. It is more about, is there a plan? And the plan should have an editorial component to it that is not just the numbers. It's not just, well, the plan is we're trying to hit. You told me that the number was 5 million, and my plan is to try and hit 5 million. The plan is the strategy that informs how you're going to get to 5 million and what it speaks to in terms of your understanding of the market. And when I've done poorly with the board, it is their perspective to me that I'm not actually explaining a narrative that relates to how I interact with the market. I'm citing numbers, but I'm not explaining why those numbers are relevant or how they fit into a plan. And that is and when I've seen them give feedback on other members of the executive team, or I've seen other boards, again, it's the executive that lists activities, that lists things, but doesn't cohere it into a plan where that plan is guiding towards a prescribed narrative. Because everything that the board wants to understand is not, I once interviewed Tomas Tanguz, and he said, well, the CRO's job is to hit the number. That's not really true. It's not really true. Your job is to explain that why you're hitting the number, hitting the number, and that it is a function of the ideas that you put into place over the preceding 6 to 12 months. I think if you can't do that, you're in trouble, regardless of if you hit the number. And then if I'm giving any numbers at all, I'm giving conservative numbers only because I've seen that. I'll say that here's how much cushion is in the plan. Yeah. Here's how much cushion's in it. Here's how much potential. Maybe there's a little bit of upside. I'll say this is a conservative plan. But I really do not want to come in under the number that I'm ever sharing.
Sam, I was going to say I was going to give a better answer until that last 3 minutes. So you saved yourself from it. No, I actually agree. I think I'm going to elevate that a little bit on the narrative part and say the board doesn't want to hear about everything that's going well. Like, don't just stand up there and talk about all of the, like, this channel is going super, super well, but instead talk about why it's going well and how you're going to improve it in the next quarter, and or even bigger opportunity, what's not going well, and what are your hypotheses around where you can like help. Specifically, this is for anything, but for pipeline, on how you're going to help improve those channels, how you're going to sponsor Pavilion for a year, and like work your community angle in a better way. And you're going to go meet your customers where they are and get more advocates and create an ambassador program or whatever it is you're going to work on a pipeline. They want to hear the story behind that, not just the numbers. So do not just have, especially when we talk about pipeline. Guess what? Our pipeline, hot take. Our pipeline for our board meeting isn't even in the main deck. It's in the appendix. I am shortening down to 15 slides for our deck.
That's interesting. Because Reverse really likes pipeline in deck, so you're going against the grain there. That's interesting.
And you know what? We had a strong quarter. We've talked about it, but at the end of the day, we're we want to show that, like, hey, if you have questions about it, we'll talk about it. But like, we don't, unless there's very specific questions. I feel strongly that there is a plan. We've gone after that plan. We're meeting expectations. And so I don't need to be super redundant on that plan.
That's you being against it because you guys are killing it, right? Like, there's a swagger a person can have when they've hit a couple of quarters in a row.
We should do a whole Topline episode on board decks of when I'm not killing it and it's 76 slides.
There's a difference in how you communicate.
No, but 13 slides. What, Sam?
Every feedback I've ever gotten from the board is exactly what AJ is saying. Don't data dump me. Don't data dump me. Show me that you know what the hell you're doing. Put everything in the appendix. Like, I don't want to talk about every single data point. Every piece of feedback I've gotten from the board, is like, you're tracking too many numbers. Like, if you're tracking too many numbers, you don't know what drives the business. You don't know what drives the business. If you have to present 72 different numbers, show me the 4 numbers that move your business forward.
I think the part that you guys were talking about when it comes to the narrative, the editorial part of what you're presenting, one of the things that I'm proudest of in terms of the work we do on Topline together is when somebody reaches out to get the source of something we've discussed because they want to add it into a board memo, a board deck. It happens so often. I love when that happens. But it's a skill that takes time to develop. Sam, like, you guys should probably have a course on like how to write these type of things, because it doesn't come to people that easily, but it seems like an absolute essential skill to have if you want to be really good. What I want to connect it to is this thing that we spoke about in the main episode at the end about stage appropriateness, this idea that professionals are stage appropriate. And I think one of the reasons why a board or an executive team gets worried about a CRO or a head of revenue in seat is when they feel the person is unable to see around the corners anymore. The next couple of years are too hazy in this person's mind. And that's where they start getting worried. Even if the person's executing well today, they're not the right person to set us up for the future. The editorial is where you can show the board consistently every quarter that you are the right person because you're able to look out and you're able to talk about it the right way. So that's what I would add to it.
the last thing I would say is, this is a team. You and your board are a team. So if your board wants 200 slides, fair enough. I don't know what to say. I'm just telling you that I think there's a broader conversation that we should have on a future episode. Again, we've talked about it and alluded to it. What is the point of the board meeting? And how, and maybe we bring on, who we should bring on? Bring it, JR. Bring it.
No, JR would be great. Look, I've gone through many, well, I will project here for a second. Gone through many iterations of the board. I think JR would be a great person to talk through like the journey that we've gone through and how I've gotten to a much better spot. And hopefully you can attest to the work that we've had to put in together as a board. Sam, I think your point is 100% right. It's like the board has to self-realize. But I think this is one part where I wish boards were more honest about this, and rather putting it on the weight of the shoulders of the founder, the CEO, take it on together. It is a team sport, but it doesn't always feel like it's a team.
But okay, let me ask you a question. The only time a board made sense to me is when it's a really large business or when you raise money from somebody else. All right. Like that's really the only point of a board. Like if you're a private company doing 10, 20, 30, 40 million, and you don't have outside capital, why would you have a board?
I like the accountability measure part of it, but that's why people become CEOs and founders. They don't want to have a board.
We don't need principles for the sake of principles, right? Like it's a fiduciary responsibility primarily because they've invested money and it's a mechanism for them to be active stakeholders on their investment. And so that's when it makes a lot of sense to me. And then, yes, there are very large businesses that are publicly traded where I think it makes a lot of sense to have a board. But I think in most businesses that are not of that sort, like I see services businesses starting off or bootstrap technology companies establishing boards for the sake of having a board. And that's ridiculous to me. If you don't need one, you shouldn't have one.
Come on, end this with a ditty, Sam. I was waiting for you to jump in. By the way, last week, hold on.
I think Asad is a little bit ornery, and he doesn't like other people. And maybe you need some accountability.
I have a correction to make from last week's Topline Hotline. It was The Odd Couple was the tune that I was singing. So I apologize to all you Odd Couple fans.
Listen, it's time to go. It's been great and it's been real, but it has not been real great. And we love you, you little so-and-sos, you little devils, you little.
Sam wants a call from me. Sam's waiting for his call from me.
Give me some
kiss.
You get in here and you give me a kiss. All right.
Good night, everyone. Goodbye.
Good evening. Goodbye.
Bye, everyone.